Princess Shuri likely protected Brook with the last bit of her will. Emu just might be in for a world of hurt, and there is a chance that one of Brook's songs will come to define the smile that every member of the Will of D exhibits upon their death. But before all of this, I want to talk about this week's cover art request. Now, let me tell you, I really appreciate every moment we get that demonstrates the kindness of Loki. Most of themselves told us about this. And this week's cover art is no different, as it shows him covertly drawing Ida, whom he does not realize is actually watching. She very happily silences the animals around and continues to watch with a smile. Now, Oda has been ripping the flashback mothers out from under us during this arc. And so, because of that, I find myself happy to get to see Ida again. Now, with that, let us get into the chapter. The army of Esperia is desperately fighting back against the world government, shouting that their only shot of freedom, of independence, is to win this battle. Little do they know, though, that it is already lost. Now, Brook comes face to face with this fact upon entering the throne room to what is probably the worst possible outcome imaginable. And Oda depicts this in an interesting way by surrounding Brook, who looks absolutely shocked, mind you, with a ring-like pattern. A pattern that is not unlike what you might see when throwing a rock into a pond. What this does in both my example and in the chapter is depict everything around Brook, including his thoughts and emotions, becoming distorted or even blocked out entirely. Almost as if in this moment he does not yet believe what it is that he is seeing. What really got to me in this section is that Brook's manner of calling Luven his majesty breaks down completely, not accepting or willing to entertain the thought that Luven is probably already dead. Brook calls out for a medic, screaming out for his big brother, or Anarchy, if you will. And to further just rip our hearts out, right? This is accompanied by Brook remembering Luven and his smile from when they very first met, and how he was one of the first individuals to show Brook genuine kindness. Ignoring the surroundings, fixated on his big bro, Brook is unable to do anything outside screaming for that medic and continuing to call out to Luven. The scene is broken up by whom I believe to be Emu, stating that this sudden intrusion is quite the inconvenience for Mu-sama. I added that last part in there. And with Shuri ever so coldly stating, "Brook, you know that guy is dead already, right?" And this carries us into the next part of the chapter. Brook points his sword to who we now know is God's Knight, Saint Man-Mayor Grow. And boy, does he demand to know what they have done to Shuri, claiming that he knows all there is to know about her. And this is where Shuri interjects with the select few things Brook would not have known. The like 2 things, or even 1 thing. Now, I suspect here that her words and actions, they are not fully her own, right? And are instead being influenced by Emu and Dami Reversi. This is not unlike when Harold first described to us the way the Covenant was influencing his thoughts and his actions. She first asks Brook if he knew that she is a celestial dragon, and that Luven, or as she foully calls this guy, was not her real father. Now, Brook admonishes her for this, for calling him this guy, but is still very confused. Now, we speculated on this in the last chapter, we talked about it a bit, but I think it is now pretty evident that Grow was the celestial dragon who rocked up on Esperia. And he is likely the biological father of Shuri. But let me tell you, he sure as hell ain't her dad, though. That's Luven until the end of time. I'm standing behind that one. And that the reason Kandel was bedridden for months was due to the pregnancy and birth of Shuri. As Kandel does not come up at all in this chapter, I am fairly convinced that one, she is dead and gone. Rest in peace, Kandel. And that she had no direct ties to the celestial dragons. And that Luven truly was the man that she loved. The impetus for their marriage, however, was probably to cover up what happened, to preserve her dignity, and to give Shuri the life she deserved growing up. Before continuing, I would like to draw attention to the fact that throughout this whole interaction, Shuri has entirely lost her smile. The smile we practically saw on her for the entirety of the 16 years of her life that we were shown. Except for when she pouted at Brook. But you get what I mean, right? This is not the same Shuri that we know and love. Brook then asks her what she is even saying and states that it is a fact she is the child of King Luven. Shuri fires back, asking if he can really prove that, to which Brook responds, peak response in the world of One Piece, and maybe even in general, that it is irrelevant when it comes to the bond they formed in life. And here we really start to see more of Imu's influence kicking in. It goes without saying that Shuri loved her parents. That is a foregone conclusion. During the last few chapters, we were shown this fact through and through. Yet to Brook, she responds saying that her bonds do not matter, and that all that matters was finding out that she is a celestial dragon. She calls this life-changing news. And she states that she should have been raised as a celestial dragon, lamenting that the 16 years of her life were a complete waste. She then also goes on to tell us that Luven lied about the 1,000 slaves being demanded by the celestial dragons, and stated that instead, Shuri herself was all they had asked for. Of course, there was no way Luven was going to give up his daughter and the kingdom's princess. But who can be sure how the citizens would have reacted had they heard that only one person, granted, it is their precious Princess Shuri, maybe they would have gone to war for her too. But it's different from them knowing, oh, 1,000 slaves, maybe picked at random, maybe me might be selected for this. So while Luven was misleading, I do understand the cover-up. Shuri then calls Luven a good-for-nothing king. So foul. Imu, you need to pay. I'm talking to you, Imu. You need to pay. Shuri calls Luven a good-for-nothing king who pointlessly led his people to their doom. And from the eyes, again, of an Imu-controlled Shuri, I'm certain that that is exactly how this looks. Yet it truly is not that simple. Shuri goes on to say that this is why she made him take responsibility, and that with his death, the war can end. And despite Brook telling her that defeat will make their nation a lawless land, Shuri claims that it is simply no longer her concern. And now, before we continue, if you like the video, if you like hearing my thoughts, if you love my beard, please give me a like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, leave a comment in the comment section. a lot of people who watch the videos are not subscribed. And while that is okay, people should do what they want, I would love to change that. Not only is subscribing super important and interacting super important for small channels, which mine most certainly is, more so than that, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, with that shameless self-plug out of the way, back to the regularly scheduled programming. We now get the formal introduction to God's Knight, Saint Manmayer Grow, who recalls that Brook was an attendant to Candel in the past, stating that Brook was never allowed to come near him. And here we receive a quite Naruto-coded revelation. You see, Grow has the same mismatched eyes as Shuri, heavily hinting at it being hereditary. And it is these eyes that brought the celestial dragons to a backwater country like Esperia. It turns out, rumor has it, that these eyes, they are special in some way, and that while Grow did not awaken his, Shuri just might awaken hers. Before we can get any more lore on this though, the tight-lipped Shadow Emu tells Grow that he has said too much. This does not mean we cannot speculate a bit though. My initial thought is that these eyes might lead to a potential stronger or more in-depth connection with Emu, resulting in him being able to take a greater amount of control over an individual. This could be why Shuri has been Emu's attendant for so long. I also briefly thought about it being connected to her eternal youth, but because we can be fairly sure the Gorosei have that as well, and none of them have these mismatched eyes, I think it is more likely that that is a power from Emu. What we can be sure of is that, like the Third Eye tribe, there may be other special eyes out there which hold unique powers. Individuals like Emu or even Mihawk may fall into this category as well. After this, we get into the part of the chapter that actually really messed me up the most. This was the hardest section to read. As Shuri walks towards Brook, he asks if this is a dream, and while crying, talks about how he used to change Shuri's diapers, and how he knows everything of importance about her. She continues to yell, calling him patronizing and claiming that him shedding tears is beyond pathetic. But this is his princess, his friend, his angel, now suddenly turned into a demon, and stating that she needs stronger protection and that if she joins the celestial dragons, she will no longer need Brook. Now listen guys, I am not a parent, but I am an uncle. And so when I try to imagine being part of the life of my niece, who is also an angel, super cute, for 16 years, only to have something like this happen, it absolutely breaks my soul. And as Shuri prepares an attack that Brook taught her, he in turn drops his sword. Of course, there is no way he could ever raise it against her. He again thinks about how to him, she was always an angel, but now she looks like a demon. And listen, like in his youth against the Marines, Brook is convinced that his life will end here. He thinks back on his inability to protect his big bro, and as Shuri stabs him in the head, he is reciting his song. From frogs to cattle, from kings to chattel. Of the dead, you'll find only bones get left behind. Bones alone, as everyone knows. That's just the way the story goes. When I think back on Luffy's fight against Kaido, he also said that when one dies, all that's left is bones. And it is this combination that made me feel as if this song may in some way define or depict the D-Clan members dying with a smile, again, through the medium of music. As we all know, though, Brook does not die here. He later wakes up surrounded by the members of his convoy, and they mention that it is a miracle that the stab missed his major blood vessels and brainstem. But personally, I don't think this was a miracle. In fact, I think that it was intentional. Listen, there's simply no way Shuri wanted to kill her father, and there is no way she wanted to kill Brook, whom frankly she totally loved. Instead, I think it is pretty evident that, like when she freed Brook from her arrows, here in this moment, she maintained just enough control to aim properly and preserve Brook's life while making it look like a fatal attack. The move she used against him was his and possibly Candel's Gavotte, Bond, and Avant. I surely butchered that pronunciation. But what's important is each time we have seen this attack, such as in Thriller Bark and on Fishman Island, for some examples, it has been a precision move. As Brook recalls everything that happened, the flashback ends, and we return to the current story. I will say that I would have loved to have seen just a little bit more, maybe through him joining the Rumbar Pirates. But I think that perhaps such a thing would not really have fit in well with what Oda is trying to accomplish with this flashback. We return to Brook speaking to Jinbei, Usopp, Nami, and Frankie, stating that back then he didn't even know what a devil fruit was. While he noticed how different the princess seemed after killing her father, and that visually she did look like a demon, he always thought he was just hallucinating. But now that he has seen Dami Reversi in person, and that this has proven what he saw that day was real, he asks the present crew members a genuine question. Do you think it's okay if I put my faith in Princess Shuri once more? As he thinks back to both her childhood and when she desperately freed him earlier, he exclaims that he wants to save her, before pleading with the crew to lend him their strength. And of course, we all know that there is no way any of them are saying no to that. And with this, the crew we have here set off to attempt to break the ice. Now, we have been told that only Ragnar can do this. So either these members find a workaround for it, or perhaps through some means, Ragnar ends up temporarily joining the group. Now, Jinbei, Nami, and Frankie all seem to have an idea on what they want to try, leaving only Usopp in panic, stating that, what am I supposed to do? It already seems as if explosives won't work. So perhaps one of his moments for this arc might be to partner with Ragnar, and instead of attacking Emu, instead he assists Brook in freeing Shuri by melting the ice. I also really think that Brook is going to undergo some sort of awakening here, either to Haki, his Devil Fruit awakening, or both. And that this, in conjunction with his soul, his music, is what will in some way free Shuri from Emu's control completely. We now move into the ending portion of the chapter. We see that Luffy is back up on his feet, full power, ready to go. And that the non-blob, chatty Cathy Emu, there is such a difference between blob Emu and real Emu. He gives us some additional lore. He states that 800 years ago, Elbaf was defeated in a bid to rescue their children. And while this length of time seems to shock Loki, Imu goes on to say that a few centuries is not enough to change the nature of a race. Without fail, the giants will bend the knee when their offspring are taken. And that while they are ignorant of why this is significant, history will always repeat itself. He then proceeds to get, so very satisfyingly punched in the face by Luffy, Charlo style. And with all of this, I am becoming increasingly convinced that Imu and the Gods Knights are going to fail here on Elbaf. And that rather than history repeating itself, this time a new outcome, or dawn, if you will, is to be brought about by the team up of Sun God Nika Luffy and Nidhogg Loki. And that the combination of the Straw Hat crew specifically will be the deciding factor in this battle. So what did you think of this chapter? Is there anything I missed? Is there more you would like to discuss? I would love to hear more about it in the comments below. Again, like and subscribe, super helpful. I would appreciate it. And with that, also, no break next week. Gotta love it, no break next week. In any case, with that, I would like each and every one of you to have an excellent rest of your day.